The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This is Orioles preview. Orioles trying to avoid a 9-game losing streak as they close out their series in Milwaukee this afternoon. It's a 1 o'clock start. Coverage here on ESPN 630. Gets underway at 12:30. They have become one of the worst teams in baseball after hopes that they would be one of the best, ready to make the next step after back-to-back years of making the playoffs, getting swept in the first round, that this team would be able to move forward with playoff experience. And the way they're playing right now, it doesn't look like they're going to get there. Even if they win their next 4 games, they will still not match the turnaround that the Nationals had in 2019 when they were 19-31. This team is now 15-32. They lost again last night to the Brewers 5-2. And as they had made the change during the National Series, and this was a game they only lost by 1 run on Friday night, but they had 20 runners on base, stranding 15 of them, and then lost the game on a botch play in the field. It was just indicative of what has gone on this year. And then they play the next 2 games against the Nationals and give up a total of 20 runs. And where this is going to go, hard to say, but it was interesting the way that the Orioles approached this. Mike Elias has been very visible, very accessible as the general manager. And David Rubenstein, the owner, you saw him everywhere. He was in the soaking section. He's sitting behind the plate with Cal. He's available to the media all the time. Aside from a statement, we haven't heard bupkis out of him or Elias until last night, when finally Elias addressed the situation. He had hired Hyde when they went through the complete rebuild in 2019. They'd gone through the pain. They had a 110-loss season in 2021, and then finally they started to rebound and had the 2 back-to-back seasons, as they've had the last 2 years, of making the playoffs. And he obviously was very complimentary of Hyde, of what he did in rebuilding the team, but explained why he had to make the move.
In pro sports and team sports, there come times where the go-forward look at things involve different voice and a head coaching change to receive that voice, and ultimately stretching back into early last summer. This is a team that we feel has been collectively and individually to varying degrees underperforming its talent level, and we want something new in order to hopefully restore them to the level of play that we expect of ourselves and we think that this team is capable of. So again, this is in no way an indictment or a comment on the quality of one individual's work or their talents, and this is not something that I put on one coach, but we're hoping that part of the solution to fixing this team will be achieved and sought with different head coaching voice, and so we've done that.
Was there ultimately a moment, either in a game or a voice, that changed between the May 2nd vote of confidence to the final decision?
This is something that you don't decide upon in a moment. I think the very nature of sports, when those questions are getting posed to executives or owners, it's when there are open questions about people's jobs. It tends to happen, and it's important for in this business for people in these positions to have the confidence of their bosses and their leaders while they're in those positions. But ultimately, I think this is something that as we look at our underperformance, we decide to make the move to pursue a different coaching voice and try to get these players back on track, because this has been really frustrating. This is a really good group of players, and these young position players have played so well for so long together, and we haven't seen that to the degree that we want for a while now.
Mike, was this your decision, ownership decision, or a mix of both?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I execute as the general manager, but when you're making a decision as grave as changing the manager or the head coach, that's something that you consult with ownership on very heavily, and I did.
So don't fully get the answer to the question that was asked at the end because we don't really know much about David Rubenstein as an owner. He's never been a baseball owner before last season. He's got, I'm sure, people he leans on, including Cal Ripken. But when he's asked, is this your decision, Mike Elias' decision or David Rubenstein's decision, he says, we consult with each other. So, this is not apparently a George Steinbrenner situation. Get him out of here. And it may be Mike Elias realizing, hey, you got to do something. You got to show the fan base. You got to show the players. Now, the players, they have not really responded to this. The third base coach, Tony Mansolino, is taken over, and he was asked the other day, why did this happen? He didn't really have a good answer on that. And this is a team that's just looking around like they're in shock because they were doing things the right way. You take the pain of losing, you develop the prospects, you get the draft picks because of the way your team performs. We've seen other teams tank, and it's worked out for them. And then to be where they were just a year ago, and now to be at almost the bottom of Major League Baseball, right near the bottom, this is Elias on the shock of that.
You go back to last June, we were on top of the sport in almost every facet of the sport, including majors and minors. And now we find ourselves where we find ourselves, and this has been hitting us all very hard, but it's unusual for that to be so sudden. And I'm in the process of very heavily evaluating everything that we do across the organization that pertains to the front office, analytics department, player development, you name it. We're looking at it very hard, but to our credit, this is something that has not been lingering for years and years. This is something that has mounted in months, and it's been very tough on those of us in leadership positions in the organization, but we're focused on fixing it right now. But I think the main focus is trying to stabilize this team, improve the play on the field, and get this core of players back on track.
Well, he says if this had been lingering for years and years, well, if it had been lingering for years and years, he wouldn't be there. And 2 years ago, Mike Elias was the executive of the year in baseball. Brandon Hyde was manager of the year in baseball. Brandon Hyde is now gone with Elias doing what he had to do. He admitted he was the one who pulled the trigger and made the move. And now the attention is turning to Mike Elias. And I follow Jason LaConfora on Twitter. He does a lot with the NFL, but he was also involved in the Orioles broadcast last year. I don't know whether he still is, but is very much in tune with baseball and in tune in how front offices work, particularly with the NFL, but certainly with baseball. And he's been calling for Elias's head for a long time. Others have as well. And now the focus turns to Elias and the question of his job security.
I am worried about getting this team back on track right now. I'm very disappointed with where we are in the standings right now. I mean, this is a big surprise to all of us that we're in the spot that we're in. I think you look at the preseason media predictions and things like that, projections, and there's nobody that saw this to this degree. So we're pretty stunned about that, but we're reacting to it. We're not in denial about it, and I'm working to fix it as rapidly as I can, and I'm in a position where, regardless of how it affects me or my personal situation, I have to make decisions that I judge in collaboration with my bosses and the people around me to be in the best interest of the Baltimore Orioles franchise. So that's what I'm doing.
Who initiated the conversation about this decision? Was it you? Was it ownership? Was it a collective conversation?
I don't think I want to get into too much detail about that, but it's certainly not something that I'm firing off all by myself.
Yeah, so it's a collaborative decision. Was ownership telling him, you got to make a move, because again, May 2nd, so what's today, May 21st, so 19 days ago, Mike Elias was asked about Brandon Hyde, and he gave him a full vote of confidence. It was like, oh no, not his fault, and we're not going to do anything. And then 2 weeks later, he does it. So that really is going to address what. So I guess this is really a question for David Rubenstein, and how he answers it is going to be telling. How much leash does Mike Elias have? Because this is not somebody he hired. This is somebody that he inherited, and there was no reason to be thinking about a change because he inherited a guy who had been the executive of the year in baseball when he bought the team, and he delivered another good regular season. They made it to the playoffs, but in a year where they're supposed to make the next step, they have taken a huge step backwards. The reality of where they are, this many games into the season. So they're 15-32. So what have they played? 47 games. You play 162. Is it possible to turn things around in the second half of the season?
Yes, I think we need to play much better baseball ahead of this season. I think a big part of that is going to be this team hasn't been fully healthy for almost a year. I don't know that it ever will be or that any team can expect to be, but we have perhaps the league leading amount of injuries right now. We need to get some of that back. I do think, we don't have our head in the sand about our offensive struggles, but some of these guys are just hitting the ball really hard to other spots, and hopefully that evens out. At this point, we've dug quite a hole, but there's plenty of time to play better baseball. We'll see where the standings end up. To me, my focus is kind of getting the quality of play, and in particular, our main guys that we cherish so much, getting them gelling in the way that we all became accustomed to.
Yeah, the main guy, if you had the face of the franchise, is Adley Rutschman. Number one pick of the draft, one of the top catchers in the game, not hitting. He's hitting .209. And last night, he was, 1 for 4, so picking it up a little bit, but he's got to perform. They haven't gotten the performance that they got from Gunnar Henderson a year ago. He's doing okay in the batting average, but has not delivered in the power that they hope for. And the pitching, I mean, that's really the main thing, and that's really the main criticism of Mike Elias, that he did not address the pitching in the offseason the way it needed to be addressed. And that's, again, a question of how much he was allowed to spend, how much he wanted to spend. And among the criticisms of him is that he's too tied to his prospects. If you're going to sign somebody in free agency, that you're going to lose prospects in that. And if you're going to make a trade, you're going to trade prospects. Does he want to do that? And he's been very reluctant to do it. So it's getting late early. It's a lot worse than anybody would have expected. And it starts, with one step, and that could happen this afternoon as they try to break this 8-game losing streak in Milwaukee. We will get to a conversation with Geoff Arnold, who is one of the play-by-play voices of the team, and try and get a sense from him as to where things are right now. It's Orioles Preview. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This is Orioles Preview. Orioles closing out their series in Milwaukee this afternoon. It's a 1 o'clock start. Our coverage here will get underway at 12:30. Trying to get right, trying to end an 8-game losing streak, and trying to do it on the road against teams that are better than them. They go to Boston for 4 after this, and then they'll come home next week to play the St. Louis Cardinals. Geoff Arnold, one of the voices of the team, is with us, and Geoff joined the team as they were rebuilding, went through a 110-loss season in 2021. Playoff years, the last 2 years. Now the team is 15-32. I don't know how familiar you are with Greek mythology, but does the word Sisyphus mean anything to you, Geoff?
Not really, Andy, just because it's really hard to spell, but fill me in.
Yeah, well,
I must have missed that class in college.
Sisyphus is the one that pushes the stone up the hill only to have the stone fall back down the hill, and maybe it's a little bit too early for that metaphor, but, what has it been like in the last few weeks with a team that was supposed to be making a run at the World Series this year?
Yeah, I think it's something that was unexpected. I think that in many ways it's been a continuation of what happened in the second half of last year where, I remember, I think it was June 19th, it's kind of the line of demarcation where you get this big win against the Yankees and then you go to Houston afterwards and you don't play very well there. And there were just a lot of injuries that followed and a lot of guys struggled. Adley Rutschman in particular had a tough second half of the year. And it really has just continued. It's been very hard to stack wins together. It's been honestly hard to stack base runners together for the team. Mm-hmm. And the pitching has been really poor. And there's just not a whole lot that they have done well this year. And when you add all that stuff up, you're unfortunately going to be in this spot that you're in right now. The hope is that, I think eventually, Mike Elias will make some moves, and this will be a reboot. It will not be a rebuild, but the Orioles are certainly in a tough spot right now and in a really big hole on May 21st.
Yeah, I saw the Nationals here in 2019. They were 19-31 coming out of Memorial Day weekend. You guys would have to get on a heater to do that. Aside from getting guys back from injury, or any signs that you're seeing that guys are coming out of slumps or anything like that?
Gunnar Henderson has started to turn it on, which has been good. He's been hitting the ball really hard. He's got some home runs. I think he's got 4 in his last 10 games. That has been good to see. Ryan O'Hearn has had a terrific first half of the year. Cedric Mullins, he had a little bit of a dry spell at the start of the month, but he's starting to do better, and he's got a couple of home runs recently. But Jackson Holliday's had a nice year, but just trying to put it all together at one point has been the problem, where maybe one day your offense scores you 8 runs and then your pitching staff gives up 9, or you have problems on defense. So just trying to pull it all together in one game has been something the Orioles haven't been able to do all year.
Yeah, it's tough in any situation where a coach or a manager gets fired during the season, and especially this one where Brandon Hyde had brought the team up from when it was rebuilding and built them into a contending team, and then to see him go. The players, from what I understand, took a lot of responsibility for it. They felt bad about it. What do you sense in their confidence now with Tony Mansolino and how they can turn things around?
Yeah, I think that, Tony is a guy who's very positive, and he's also got experience. I mean, he has managed in the minor leagues for a while. He won a AAA championship when he was with the Cleveland organization, and really smart, works hard, has relationships with everybody, and, is good at building, I think, team chemistry. So I think there's a certain comfort level that a lot of players have with Tony, because he's really good at getting around the clubhouse and spending time with everybody. But I don't think it's like you snap your fingers and it's some easy fix. Tony's continuing to do the best he can. I think that, the way he's managed initially has been with maybe a little bit more urgency late in games, where if you get down 3 runs, you might call on somebody like a Brian Baker just to try and give you a little bit of a spark and get you going, kind of what we saw last night. But yeah, it's a tough spot, for Mansolino, and I think the team realizes, you had Brandon Hyde leave, and I think there's some responsibility from the guys that was felt about that. But now it's like, all right, we have to step up and just play better.
Yeah, no question about it. So, as you've watched this whole thing develop under new ownership, and nobody really has a sense of David Rubenstein, and Mike Elias, tried to answer this as well as he could yesterday. But what's your sense of him as an owner? Patience, who he leans on, aside from Elias on decisions like this. Do we have any idea what he's like as a baseball owner, especially when you're going through a period of time like this?
It's really hard to say, Andy, just because he's so new to this. And, he came in when things were going really well. And to see it kind of flip so suddenly, I think has been a surprise to, us for sure, and then kind of everybody in the baseball world. I mean, David Rubenstein is a guy that's amassed a lot of personal wealth and has had a great career in the business world and the private equity world. So, you don't get to the spot he is in life without having to consult with a lot of different people and make tough decisions, and also just, find the right people at the right time to be able to talk to figure out how to solve problems that need to be solved. That being said, I think that he kind of allows, and, this is just my look at it, Mike Elias to do his thing and, trust what he has to say, just because Mike has such a good track record. But you know what? I'm sure that, he consults a lot of different folks too. And you do have Cal Ripken, for instance, as part of your ownership group. And, there's a lot of people that I'm sure he's turning to and looking at and leaning on. as the Orioles try and get this thing back on track.
Yeah, I think you have to have a circle of trust, and we've seen that here with the Mike that runs the Nationals. They've had the best of times and some of the worst of times, and ownership has stuck with him. My sense is, I don't really know anything about the relationship between the two, but if you built it like this, do you want to pull the rug out from under him right now? It's amazing that 2 years after being named Executive of the Year, that Elias has to answer questions about his job security, but that's just the nature of the beast, It
is. That's just how baseball is sometimes, where you can be on top of the world at one moment, but as we know, Major League Baseball, just like the NFL or any other major league sport, you have to adjust, you have to make tweaks, and if things are not going well, no one is going to feel sorry for you. Mm-hmm. It is, you have to quickly turn things around, and you see some teams that get going in the right direction and then take a step back, or maybe even a little bit more than that. Some teams rebound from it. Other teams, such as, say, the Chicago White Sox, were right there, and everyone thought this is going to be a team that's going to be competing for a while, and they bottomed out. And we've kind of seen how things have gone since then. So, but I think, for Mike, everything is on the table right now. He realizes that some changes might need to be made, and he needs to evaluate his processes and things that he's doing to make sure that this thing can get turned around pretty quickly. And but when you have something like this, I think it's pretty eye-opening, no matter if you're a GM, a player, a coach, a fan, a broadcaster, or whoever, but you're just hoping that it's going to be able to turn pretty quickly and that you'll be able to push some of the right buttons to make that happen.
Yeah, well, these are the days that you earn your money. People tune in for a good time, and you got to keep them entertained, and I know that's difficult at times, but as we say, the sun will come out tomorrow, right?
Yes, it is. And, at the end of the day, Andy, we're still working in the toy department of life here. We're still doing baseball. We're not working for the IRS or anything like that.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
we're here to have a good time.
Still get to go to the ballpark every day, which is a good thing. Good to catch up with you, Geoff. Thanks very much.
You got it. Take care.
That's Geoff Arnold, who was Maryland Sportscaster of the Year a couple of years ago. And, I've listened to Charlie and Dave over the years. The Nationals were really, really bad. And these guys do a great job, as Geoff does, and the entire crew of the Orioles. You tune in to a game because you want to be entertained. And whether the team is bad or whether the team is good, baseball is kind of the background of summer. And listening to announcers like that and who do a great job like Geoff Arnold is part of the fun of summer. Not a lot of fun to be an Orioles fan these days, but, it's a long season. Things can turn around. 14 teams make the playoffs. It's unlikely that they will get to the point where they can make the postseason, but you never know. You never know. People were talking in 2019 about blowing up the Nats, trading the great players for prospects. Good thing they did not. All right. Thanks to Geoff Arnold for joining us today. Isaac Harris for running the show. Thanks to all of you who listen. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow here at 9 a.m.